to feel into that failure. And it's so easy for us to get lost into that woe is me trap. And believe me, I was there. Like before I went back to work, I didn't even want to face reality for 2 weeks. Like I cried myself to sleep every night. I was doing the whole, eat ice cream while watching Netflix on repeat because we don't want to face reality. But the reality is that's all a learning experience. Yep. And you're so right with the failing forward. And I think that's such a great lesson for us as females is how can we look at what a man would do in this situation? And I don't want to, and I hate doing that, but I think it's so true because women are so much more emotional that we have to look at it from like a systematic point of view, which I think is more the male side of the brain, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I always tell people that I have learned to not be too attached to my successes or my failures.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. Cause that's the thing. If you're going to take the successes really seriously, then the problem is you're going to take the failures really seriously too. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. You kind of have to separate yourself a little bit, which is hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to do as a business owner because it's like everything you put out into the world is your baby. But you have to, I think surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs like yourself, Jennifer, and having that mentality where someone can be like, girl, you know what I mean? Like just brush that off is so crucial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Slay Your Marketing Mastermind was built on not being able to get clients in my service-based business and losing everything. And when I got to the point where I lost everything, it was kind of like, well, there's no place to go from here but up. And it's like, well, what do I know? Well, damn sure I know now how to get clients.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing about failure, right? Is every single time you fail, just like I mentioned, it's not rejection. Like you have to look at it like you weren't supposed to go that way. It's like the universe or God or life or whoever is nudging you and saying, no, like you're not supposed to go that way. You're supposed to go this way. And that's exactly why you are here where you're at, Jennifer. This is exactly why I'm here, why I'm at. And anyone that's listening, if you're where you're at and you're feeling unhappy about it, just know there's a reason why you're there and lean into that feeling. Lean into that feeling of dissatisfaction about your past, because that's going to be like what's going to propel you forward. And you're going to stumble upon something that makes you look back and say, okay, this is why this happened. This is why that was supposed to happen to me, because I was supposed to be right here. And it's hard when you're in the mix of it. It's hard when you're in the midst of all the muck and the dirt. But once you get past it and you can look back, it's such a beautiful hindsight is 2020 experience.
Oh my God, you're killing me softly, Jessica. I think you've been reading my diary. Who sent you?
Oh, now you know.
So once again, because we have this natural flow, you and I, you talked about your lessons that you learned from your first business. What was your first business? And if you don't mind, if you could talk to her, that Jessica from when you were closing up shop, what would you say to her?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question. I've never had to do that before. So my first business was, I was a certified wellness coach. I went to schooling for it, and I had recently kind of changed up my diet. I was eating a more plant-based diet, and I was food blogging, and I was really successful in the beginning because I had so much passion about it. And I was just literally going by the seat of my pants, being driven by my passion. And I picked up a lot of clients in the beginning, but, things started to dwindle. And I'm so glad you brought this up, but I was really attached to it emotionally, more attached than I should have been, where instead of picking up the pieces and looking at it from a business, looking back, I let it slip away, and I didn't have the things in place that I should have had in place. But I think if I were to look back at that Jessica, at the Jessica of when did it all go in the can, was the end of 2015. And, it was right before the holidays, and I was just depressed. I was so depressed. And if I were to kind of reappear back then, I would probably tell her to number one, don't be so hard on yourself. we beat ourselves up so badly that we are, it's so cliche, but we are our own worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so mean to myself. Like the things that I think that I said to myself internally, I would never tell, even a random acquaintance, like, you're a failure and you'll never make this up again. And how could you let this happen? And, I don't want to get too deep on here, but I was past the point of needing to go back to a job. Like I had maxed out a few credit cards because I kept telling myself, no, Jessica, you'll get this back. But that was all ego talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really listening to what I needed to listen to, which was get out of the emotional part, take a systematic approach to your business. And if I were to tell myself, don't be so hard on yourself, I would also tell myself exactly what I just shared here, which is you didn't fail. You're just being redirected. And I'm so happy I failed. That's the funny part. Like, I'm so happy I failed because realizing this next chapter of my life that is all about side hustlers and focusing on a different part of online businesses has been like such a blessing for me. So I think those would be the two big things, but I love that question. I mean, you're making me emotional over here.
I'm feeling the same way because literally, with me, it was almost the same story. I remember when I was, failing, and I was actually like, it had gotten so bad that I was really considering, like I was at the point where I almost like packed up all of my things. I live in Atlanta. I almost packed up all of my things and moved back to Ohio with my mother.
Yeah.
So, and I remember and it was after a big career change because I went from corporate to being in the service industry. And just knowing that I was going to make like this big splash when I got there. And then 3 years later, I'm literally like losing my house. And I was like, oh shit, like I have really destroyed my life. I've destroyed my child's life. I'm going back home as a 30-year-old woman living in her mother's basement. Like, and like you said, we are so mean to ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. But once I let those feelings go, and again, like you were saying, not to sound so cliche, but once I let those feelings go and I let go of the emotional attachment to everything, when I say everything changed, within like a year and a half later, I was engaged. I had another house. It was just, everything started happening. I knew what I wanted my business to be. Everything happened once I just let go and I allowed myself to be redirected.
Yes, I love that. I love that, Jennifer. And everything you're saying is bringing up like emotions for me. And I want to throw in something else that I was thinking is, I think it's so easy for us to isolate ourselves when we're in a dark place. And I actually think it's good to take some time for yourself and let yourself process. But I also think it's as equally important, if not more so, to get yourself around other people that can help you pick up the pieces, right? Because it's like, I was so dark that I didn't want to be around anyone. And I was ashamed too, because I didn't want to tell anyone that things didn't work out, because for so long I was like, oh my gosh, things are great. And that's another thing we do as entrepreneurs is like, things are always great, right? Things are always rosy. And it can be hard, especially on social media, if you're just starting out or if you're having your own challenges and you're seeing that everyone else is successful, when in reality, we have no idea, right? We have no idea what's going on behind their closed doors. But I think at the end of the day, surrounding yourself with other people that either know how you feel or have been there before, forcing yourself to go to an event, forcing yourself to go to some, even if it's just like a meetup.com thing, or going to a mastermind that Jennifer has put on, and is so crucial. It's so crucial.
Thanks for the plug, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, we're having therapy sessions in here right now. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit.
Sure.
And we're going to go into one of my favorite subjects. I know it's yours since you're a marketing girl too.
Yes.
Let's talk about what it took when you finally came up with the idea of the subscription box, which, by the way, is brilliant. Like, what was that process and what was the first thing that you did to market that?
Yes. So a few things I want to point out. My subscription box, SheClub Monthly, I didn't launch that until after I had left corporate.
Okay.
But, when I left corporate, I had a pretty good pipeline going. I had, a handful of really good clients. But most importantly, I had an email list. And this is one thing that I think I see all the time, especially when I start working with someone one-on-one, that a lot of us are lacking. So I want to point out the importance of email marketing, because when you have an email list, and I'm talking about like people that are on your list because they love you and they love what you do, you can parlay that into anything, whether that's, for me, at the time I was like, oh my gosh, what is I can't stop thinking about starting a subscription box. Should I follow that little nudge? Should I listen to that voice? And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work out after 6 months, I'll ditch it. But I have an email list that I can sell to. And one of the big things about me starting a subscription box is because I knew that when I left corporate, I wanted to have sustainable income. And this is something that I think is so important, is that you want to create something that's going to be predictable revenue. And whether you're in a service-based business or some sort of e-commerce business, I knew that I wanted to separate myself as a coach, as a mentor. I wanted to be able to offer something that was maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say less expensive, because it is less expensive. I mean, if you get boxes from SheClub Monthly, it's less than if you do coaching with me. But I wanted it to be something that, from the consumer point of view, it could be touched, it could be felt. It's a monthly reminder to women that may be feeling down or needing, like they need more training. It's that monthly thing they get every single month to help their head stay in the game. But from a business owner standpoint, I wanted to pursue a business that was going to be predictable. And I think that's been one of the most beautiful things that I learned through starting a subscription box business, is knowing that the revenue is predictable. Like, I know based on my growth patterns what I'm going to make next month. All of my subscriptions renew automatically. And I know what I'll make 6 months from now, 1 year from now. And I think that has been probably the biggest learning lesson for me, and the biggest breather for me too, because I went from thinking, well, what if I lose this client, or what if what if these people don't stay with me, and all the panic that I felt my first go around as an entrepreneur, to really being able to breathe and live my life because I have that sustainable income. So I like I mentioned, I think that's so important when you're looking at your business, the structure of it and the systems you want to put in place, is how can you create predictable revenue? Like, if you're doing coaching, or if you're doing a service or something, instead of maybe taking a one lump sum, what if you did like a 12 payment plan? Or what if you offered a course that was an ongoing, or a mastermind, right? That's an ongoing payment, because that creates so much more sustainability in you as an entrepreneur, and predictability for your revenue, which should be like number one or number two in your business. Did that answer your question?
I mean, I'm taking notes. I don't know if everybody else listening is taking notes, but I am taking notes and going, wow, this is a powerful call. And I hope that the listeners really understand how much valuable information you're giving right now. So I know, right? So you've created some great products and some great resources for female entrepreneurs. What other ventures, personal or business related, are you interested in exploring? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things I did in 2018, on top of building and scaling SheClub Monthly, was I released my book, which has been a work in progress for 2 years. Anyone that's writing a book can relate. And one of the things that I always said was, I want to put a book into the world. But then once I put a book into the world, like, I almost put this as hey, you can't do this until you do this. Once I put a book into the world, I want to focus more on in-person. And it's so funny because I'm so big on digital. I'm so big on work from wherever and laptop lifestyle. I think that's the beautiful thing about the age that we're in. But I also think that as we move more into that age, we also crave that in-person emotion and touch and feeling.